Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adepticon at Home Army Review. So, this is very exciting, as obviously this is the first time that I've done something like this, and basically we have the only AOS coach to thank for this. So, on AOS Coach's website, which I've got here up on my screen, and you will be able to see it. Uh, in the description down below as well, there's a full schedule for all the events going on. Even though we're at the end of Friday, there's obviously a bunch of events tomorrow and Sunday, basically the whole weekend that would have been Adepticon. So do check that out. I'll link it down below. Obviously, tomorrow morning, we'll be back for the reaction show to the preview event tomorrow morning. So I'll see you in about 12 hours. But either way, what we're going to do right now is we're going to get into the various armies that were submitted here. I've got them all downloaded, and we're going to look at them all in turn. I'm just going to go through them, kind of literally give you my thoughts. This will be probably an insight into how I generally look at armies and evaluate them as a judge. So normally I'm the paint judge for Adepticon and for Nova and other events. And this gives me a chance to share with everybody how I do this. I'm always very transparent with my judging and offer a lot of feedback to everyone. So I have no problem with, when I talked to Coach and said, yeah, I'd love to do this. Now, one thing I will warn you on and hadn't contemplated in advance is that I didn't describe the exact format of how people should submit pictures. Like, how many pictures? What should they be of? What format should they be in? These are things that didn't occur to me because this is all very on the fly as we were trying to hustle this all together. And Coach did so much work getting everybody together and just really hustling all of us into this schedule. So all thanks to Coach. It just did not occur to me that that I would need to put rails around that. So I apologize in advance. Some people have lots of photos. Some people have a few, have whole army shots, don't. It's kind of all over the shop, and that's just fine. We're gonna roll with it, people. If we ever have to do this again, I will be prepared. Let's hope that we don't have to do this again, because we hope we don't have to ever cancel an event. Now, that being said, one of the things that this has sort of brought to my attention as I was reviewing these armies, and as I saw some people even chatting in the comments, that there's a lot of people who work on their armies and never really get to go to events. And obviously, I do a lot of monthly reviews on the PMP on my Facebook group, so I do the monthly reviews there. But this honestly seems like a pretty cool thing. So, there's a lot of discussion right now about how we all connect and how we share and what we're going to learn and what we're going to keep from this ordeal that we're all going through. And so one of the things I'd like to say is I would love to do this again. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think this will be a great chance for folks who don't normally have a chance to go to big events and share their armies with folks to share their armies. So let's consider this the beta test for something like this and a great chance for other people to share their army. And we will next time put some guardrails around it, and we'll do it for fun. Not because an event was canceled or for any negative reason, but just because what a fun way to celebrate everybody's hard work. To celebrate all the hours and the passion and the love that people put into their army. I think this would be a great show. So I'm not sure how regular I'll do it, but we're definitely going to do this again. So there you go. Like I said, down below, check out the schedule. There'll be a link to AOS Coach's page. There you will be able to find the full schedule for everything coming tomorrow and Sunday. And there is a whole lot of stuff. So with that out of the way, how about we get into it, folks? So these are just kind of in pseudo-alphabetical order because I folderized people who had multiple armies, except for the very last one. There's somewhat of a method to my madness. There are 2 videos I can't play because I don't have the codec for those. So we got to talk about the HEIF format or whatever, and why we don't use that. It's MP4s and JPEGs and PNGs. People, come on now. At any rate, let's get into it. So we'll start with Adam Trunzo. So Mr. Trunzo, well-known lover of Skaven, and he's been working on a new display board here. So I'm going to make this as big as I can, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and shrink my own picture down here. I'll get real small. There we go. That way we can see that, and I'll zoom in and zoom around and stuff like that. So Adam has been working on his big display board, which he shared with us here with his miniatures. So we can take a look around it. We can see the big Verminlord Warbringer up there and some Storm Fiends. And obviously we've got the wonderful infinite effect, the little infinite cheat there. That's a cool effect you can do. Figure out how to like repeat an image, make it look like it's an infinite effect going back there, even though there's actually not, that doesn't go back there forever. You can see the hole cut in here. You'll see how this goes as we go through some more pictures. There's the whole sweep of this thing. Yes, this is truly massive. The size of this Skaven invasion of a dwarven city is pretty amazing. So let's go ahead and zoom in. You can see all the lattice work and stairs coming up, the hole cracked through the floor, all this great stuff down here. So really, really impressive display board as always. Here we go. You can see some more imagery down here. Obviously, lots of conversions going on with the different models that are roaming around in here. You can see all the lattice work. All this is obviously custom built. Like, you know, Adam just scratch built all of this. Trunzo is amazing for the various display boards he has put together. We even see some little hidden space here on the side with a little gnaw hole where they've warped in and are now burrowing out. So really, really cool stuff all around. And there's a nice overall shot of the thing. You can see the little glowing crystals and, like I said, the infinite effect hallway up there, and lots of great and glorious rats. So this is really awesome. Now, I think Trunzo's still, honestly, work in progress on this. So, I mean, you know, if I'll speak a bit how I tend to evaluate armies at events. When I do formal evaluation of armies at events, there are 3 categories I evaluate you on. And that is painting, technical quality, and overall sort of display. Painting is an evaluation of just literally how things are painted, the army itself specifically. Okay. Technical is I'm looking for things like joints still showing and mold lines and paint that is messy, it's incorrectly placed and stuff like that, where things are just you know, with your brush and didn't go back and clean it up, stuff like that. That's technical, right? And then display is the overall quality of the display board, the image, the narrative, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the big picture impact. And each of these has a weight, so they're weighted at 50%, 30%, and 20% for the 3 items. And you get a score from 1 to 10 in each. Those scores are then factored by the multiplier, and then that results in your total score. And so that everything matters, but some stuff matters more than anything else. Like, that is to say, painting matters the most, then the technical, then the overall, right? So everything matters, and everything can help or hurt you depending on how it goes. Now, I don't really have the abilities to look at these models as close up, so it's not as easy to apply my standard rubric here because, you know, I do need to be in person to evaluate things using that kind of standard method, because it's much harder in pictures I can't pick up a model and turn it around and see it from different angles and really understand it in the lighting and stuff like that. And it's harder for me to like see mold lines or things like that. So instead I went through beforehand and just kind of judged all of these on basic stuff. So I'll tell you some of my thoughts as we go along. So obviously from a display perspective, this is quite amazing work. It's a beautiful construction. It's still work in progress, obviously. And I'm sure Adam's going to do more with it because, you know, my feedback, let's say this showed up exactly as it is right now. But my feedback on it right now when it comes to things like the display board would be the stone is just way too gray with no color variation. There's no tonal variation anywhere in the stonework or in the dirt or in the wood, right? It's still just the kind of standard balsa that it was built out of. So I'd want to see a lot more color and stuff like that in there. Pigments and, washes and all sorts of things splashed around there. But the actual sort of construction of the thing is quite gorgeous. The narrative is very clear, and obviously it's very well crafted. Now, as to the army itself, so let's go back to one of these earlier pictures where we can see some of these close up. As to these guys themselves, I like the basic color pattern and stuff like that on them, but the painting doesn't stand out as much. Obviously, we're missing a lot of tonal variation, contrast, and highlights on the armor. When you look at something like another note, especially on armies, is that I'll tend to more harshly evaluate characters and larger models and centerpieces. That is to say, like, if you had to paint 100 of a thing, I'm okay with them not generally being as perfect. Now, if you get there, it's better. That is to say, like, when... Oh, I'm not frozen to me. Somebody told me I'm frozen, but I'm still streaming fine on my end. Like, I'm watching myself over here. Hold on. Yeah, still good. Haven't dropped any frames or anything. So, hopefully it's still fine. At any rate, but I will tend to, if you have a character model, I want to see that you put the time in on that, right? So centerpieces and things like that. If you've got 80 models, 100 models, I'm not going to beat you up for not pushing those to as high of a level. I certainly still would recommend you do that. Like, if you're trying to take down best painted at an event with 100 armies, then you better put in the time. So that's just, thoughts. But here, like, for example, what I would want to see is more detail picked out. Like, you look at the Vermin Lord, he has this ornate, intricate armor that has all these sections and plates on it. I would want to see those elements picked out. When you look at his skin, I like the pale skin. That's cool, but I want to see more shades of reds and purples and stuff like that in there. Same on the bodies of the Storm Fiends or even the regular Clan Rats. The fur is, again, I'd like to see more variation there. You look at something like the horns, and I would want to see more, more transition from a darker color out to a lighter, right? So that's sort of what I would see when I see this when I see this army. Okay, there are lots of other elements that we could probably touch on. Things like when you're using true metals, I want to see the complete variation on the true metals. I want to see you work with those just like you do normal colors, things like that. So there you go. That's, like I said, I'm going to be transparent here. This is the thoughts, because this is the same thing I would say to anybody who walked up at me at a tournament. So all these people who submitted now get to go through the ringer here to a bit. But what I'll say is Adam has a great army on his hands here. I mean, this is really impressive. Skaven are always hard because there's so many of them you have to paint. This display board is truly beyond amazing, and I can't wait to see it completely finished when I know he's still he's still working on it and is going to be adding so much more to what is already just an absolute stunner of a display board. Okay. Cool. All right, next up, Andrew Tolstedt, whose army I have seen in person. I actually got to see this. I didn't judge this event. This is an event I was participating in, but I actually did get to see this army in person recently, and it's quite nice. So let's all take a look. So Andrew has a Tzeentchian host. So here we see a bunch of his bubblegum boys. He used lots of colors for his horrors. This is obviously his Lord of Change. And you'll see some more beauty shots of this guy. Andrew did do a great job of making sure that the centerpiece model really did get a lot more love and attention, as you'll see here. So interestingly, he halved that guy. So let's zoom in there so we can all see exactly what's going on. He has a realm gate on its side on the base, and then he has the Lord of Change coming up out of the the Fallen Realm Gate. I think he has some more shots of this, so we'll go take a look at more in a moment. Here we've got some more of his horrors. So again, just a lot more. He used a lot of interesting colors on his horrors, which I didn't hate at all. I quite like that, as a matter of fact. I think it makes them interesting. They are chaotic creatures. Here we've got the Flamers, which are horrific when you paint them in normal flesh tones. Obviously, our Gaunt Summoner. And again, I like how he carried through the multicolored hues on the feathers. Some blue scribes. Another shot on those. Here's kind of a big shot of the, various pinkies and blues and brimstones. There we go. So just lots of fun shots of the army. Lots of different interesting little characters. He spent a lot of time really nicely working all these guys. Here we go. Here's a nice shot of the Lord of Change coming up out of the goop of the Realm Gate. There we can see him from head on, so you can see how he actually, bisected the figure and has him coming up out of the top. What's interesting is it's not like that stuff's all extra, by the by. That, he had to still... He just has, some Lord of Change legs now, which I guess those are just, he'll do something with those, I guess. But, yeah, it's a really cool thing, especially with sort of using the oily, inky black gloss. I like that as actually a standout to the color of the bird, because obviously the bird has lots of different colors worked into it. And so he could have gone for sort of traditional portal magical color, but then it would have actually drawn attention away from the multi-hued prismatic bird that's coming out of it. So I actually think the inky black oil was a really good choice, because then it makes sure that the thing that's getting attention in this giant model is is Big Bird here. And then we have just a few more horrors close up. So again, Andrew didn't give me a total army shot, so I apologize, everyone. Andrew did a great job here of really putting a lot of work into the Lord of Change, into, his centerpiece model. When we look at a shot like this, you can see things like how the veining on the neck is picked out, all the little feathers, the transitions. When we look back here on the feathers and the wings, you can see how he's gone in and actually hashed them all individually, adding a lot of texture that's not there. Like that texture doesn't exist. He had to paint that in. I like all of the different colors he's worked into the staff. I think that looks really nice. So just detail-wise, he did a great job of really putting in the time on this model. And I think that looks nice. Especially in an army where the rest of his people are basically bubblegum boys, and are easy to kind of, that is to say, that's not an insult to him. I just mean, that's kind of one of the challenges of painting a Tzeentch Demon army, is that the rest of your models are just kind of clumps, right? So he really put in the time there, and I think it worked out well. On the normal horrors, I think they're really nice. There are some mold lines and gaps and stuff in here that I had noticed in looking through them that I would want to pay attention to. I like the Gaunt Summoner. I think this looks really nice. That being said, when you go with the all skin head, the eyeless head, I enjoy that. I would love to see a little more blending and shading around the head to make it more colorful, things like that. Smoothing out the blend here on this part. But yeah, overall, this is a really strong army. It has a lot of life, a lot of color to it, and he added a lot of tonal variation throughout all the horrors, which I appreciate on the standard models. Okay. So, great stuff. Okay. Next up, Christian Lewis. Yeah, Christian only gave me 2 shots, and they're kind of from far out, but we'll take a look. So, Christian has a Khorne army, obviously, as you can tell from the truly obsequious amount of blood. So let's go to the second shot, because we get a little more of a zoomed in here at a low level. So what I would say with an army like this, where, first of all, I would, just in general, when we're doing photos, don't put everybody so close together and in a giant spot like this that I that I can't see the individual models, that's going to necessarily make a challenge for me. Now, that all being said, you know, the core concept here is cool. Rivers of blood running down, great, awesome. Corn people playing in it, in the blood lake. Uh, my piece of advice for you is a couple things here, Christian. First off, be careful when you go like this with blood effects. Like, that thing they're in doesn't so much look like blood as it looks kind of like cherry frosting, right? Because of just the color and tone of it. Like, blood has a very specific crimson tone, and, we didn't quite hit it there. I would also say that when it comes to basing, I get it that you want them all in this blood pool, but things like blood effects are highly more impactful when they're used in a sparing fashion. So if instead they were on rocks and there was other elements within the blood pool, and then you use the blood pool around it, like, I'm not trying to steer you away from blood pool. I get it. You want blood pool. I'm fine with that. But like, if you had other elements mixed in with the bases, and then that was sort of risen out of the pool, some of them were standing on skulls that were poking up out of there, or, whatever. You can do a lot of different stuff like that. I think in the end that makes the overall effect a lot more impactful, right? Because then there's a contrast of texture. And that's just as important with color and tone and everything as it is with texture. When everybody's just floating around in all blood, no one is, that kind of a thing. As far as the actual models go themselves, the yellow is certainly an interesting choice to be the dominant color. My best piece of advice for you would be, and it's going to be ironic given what we're on about here with sort of blood spatter, but it's to make sure that your paint job is clean, and then to do this over top. So there were some things when I'm looking in, when I sort of zoom in here into the areas, there's places where I wish some of these were a little cleaner, a little more separated, with some more dark colors against the yellow. Like right now, from a distance, everything kind of fades into one big yellowish glob. And part of that is because what you would want to see is darker elements separating that. So again, the yellow will show better when there are darker elements separating it. A few of your guys do have that, and it looks nice. So for example, if we look at the Slaughter Priest up front, the most readable part of him is the lower part where he's got black pants on, right? And so that separates out and makes the yellow much more impactful against that darker color. So if you had gone with like other black parts up here in their armor and their head and around the edges or something like that, the yellow would stand out a lot more. Think of something like the, Imperial Fists in 40K, where they have yellow, but then they have a lot of black elements always separating those things, and then red as the spot color highlight, right? So the yellow becomes impactful because it has all these dark colors it's standing against. So more of like a contrast, more of thinking about contrast in terms of the actual composition, as opposed to, say, any individual one color. Okay. But I mean, hey, boy oh boy, I mean, Corn would certainly be pleased. That is a lot of blood. Like, my goodness. Alrighty. So let's see. Oops, don't want to close that. Next up is Christine Williams with the Empyrean Guard, or Stormcast Army. Or Christian. Sorry. Is that Christian? Probably Christian. I don't know. It's this person. I probably should have. I don't know how to pronounce everybody's names, and they're on a good day. So here we have a Stormcast Army. So let's go ahead and take a look through it. Because we do have some individual shots here. So here we've got our Stormcast, our Griff Charger hero. Individual people with their fiery weapons. So, very cool stuff overall. Lots of different Stormcast. Okay, I'm going to say the first thing that jumps out at me about this army, Overall, I really like it. It's a good color scheme. Purple and gold always looks well together. Uh, so great, good stuff there. I have no problem with that as a color scheme. Purple, gold, and white. Yeah, I'm in. Like that's fantastic. Um, the first thing that bothers me so deeply, though, to my soul about this is the multi-hued base rims. Why? Why would we ever use purple or yellow or blue around the rim of a base? Like, or white? Like, no. It makes them look like game pieces from Sorry. Okay? We don't want that. Like, this image would be so much better if those were just black rimmed bases. For the love of all that is holy, please black rim your bases. Okay? If you must use a different color, I will accept a very dark brown black. But please do not use lots of fancy colors like this. It's not helping. It doesn't do anything positive. It only detracts because it's such a bright color. It's drawing my eyes away from the models because in many of these models, the brightest color hue on the model is the base rim. That's a problem. Like, that is actively diminishing your overall army on something that literally shouldn't even factor into the equation. Okay. And like, I would dock for this. Okay. If your whole army was in dark brown or something like that, I'm not gonna dock you for it. But going to something like this, it is actively working against your army. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay, now let's talk about the actual painting of the units. So overall, I like a lot of the stuff you've done, and that's the real shame of it all. I like your execution on the Stormcast. Gold looks good. You've added some nice shading to them. I like the execution of the purple needs to be smoothed some. I like what you were going for with the bases, but a lot of the paint on the bases feels rough. Some of the basing elements feel soft. I have the impression that you made these bases yourself, which is cool. Good effort there. But some of them just like it's weird sort of some of the colors you chose, and they don't feel sharp and finished. So be careful with stuff like that. Like, if you're going to craft, it's easy to make homemade bases when you're working in nature, right? Like, the easiest thing to do is to make natural bases because that's mud and dirt and rocks and trees, and nature is random. And so you don't really need to like have a whole bunch of different elements on there that need to be precision. But when you start doing something that's civilization, then my recommendation would be either A, use bases that are already pre-made, B, use elements that are already pre-made, like, go buy bricks if you want bricks on your bases or something like that, or make molds or whatever. Or B, spend a lot of time getting them clean and precision accurate. Okay. So that's kind of what I would say there. As to the purple, I feel like some of it could use a little more contrast. A few of these are good, but we could use a little more contrast on some of this purple. We don't want it to go too high or it'll clash with the gold, but it does need to go a little farther. And as always with purple, that means then coming back in with glazes at the end because some of our blends are a little rough. And you want to make sure that that's nice and smoothed out. When it comes to things like the fiery weapons, I like the idea, but again, same thing. So like when we're looking at a weapon like this back here, when we're looking at a weapon like this back here, I would want to see, I don't have a problem with the fiery weapon. It's a cool concept. Nothing wrong with that at all. I love a good fire weapon. Just make sure that these blends are smooth and that if you're going to do a white line like this, it shouldn't look like that. Like, that's white paint that's been sort of thickly applied. We need to get some ink in there. We need to get some flow improver in there. We need like a razor sharp line. I would have gone yellow white on this because there's no hard white edge if the sword's made of fire. And then after you're done, it's okay if you fudge the line. We all fudge lines sometimes. You got to go back in and clean it up and sharpen the line up. Okay. All right, but overall, cool army. I dig it. Stormcast always look great. The lower model count means you can do some really nice stuff. So I dig making all your own custom bases and things like that. I think that's a cool concept. Just make sure that when you do that, they're like, I like the designs and the patterns you've done. I think those are all really creative and awesome. Just make sure that they have the precision and the sharpness that you would want, and make sure when you're painting them, you take them up to a nice high quality. Like, again, if you're going to do mosaic tiles, then those need to either look very naturalistic, like stone, where they've been outside and they're kind of weathered and there's that kind of thing on them, or if they're inside, then they need to look quite pristine, and the paint needs to be nice, solid layers. Like you can see here a lot on this white, where it's quite chalky and where it's quite chalky and unfinished, right? Like we didn't put enough layers on of the color there. That's just, I can see very, very, very visible brush strokes and paint lines and stuff like that. We don't want that, right? Okay. So cool concept, love it. We just got to get that execution up. Alrighty. So, next up. Chuck Moore, Strength Hammer himself. Chuck with his Slaanesh army, which obviously, thumbs up, I approve. More Slaanesh. Okay. So, Chuck obviously went for a very pale scheme. He had some art that he was looking at to replicate on this, so he wanted everything to be quite pale. So let's take a look through this army. So here we see some of those Juan Diaz Daemonettes, because Chuck loves metal models. He's a sick man. He has a problem in his head. But we love him anyways. No, the Juan Diaz Daemonettes are great. They're one of the few worthwhile metal models. I'm just making a joke for Chuck there because he has like 200 metal witches. So, that's the kind of way Chuck rolls. Yeah. So overall, I mean, the color it's a nice idea of a scheme of doing something very pale. So there's two big elements that would draw me down here. Okay, and this is a nice army shot because we can just talk about it here on this shot. And thank you for including a full army shot. This is great. Nice display board, nice looking imagery. It's a good army. My basic challenge here is twofold. So one, on the first hand, right? The bases are just straight up boring. Like straight up, you just did nothing except stick down a pink tuft. Like, we got to do more than that, man. So, that's disappointing. Like, come on, they're somewhere. I don't know where they are right now. They're somewhere that's very dark with some pink tufts stuck to it. So that's number one big thing. The other element is how we tackle contrast in an army like this. Chuck wanted it to be a Haitian army, and I had seen the art he used originally, and it was a very faded, like an image lacking much contrast because it's overblown, right? Like it's an overexposed image almost, right? The challenge with that when it comes into actual models is that contrast is the name of the game in miniature painting, because that's what lets our eyes actually read things and not let them appear as pure white, right? So this presents a real challenge here for Chuck, because he wants everything to be this faded and very light color, but at the same time, he wants to also have this overblown, very bright thing. I think where I don't have a problem with it with the skin, I think I like that quite a bit. I think where we had the opportunity here to increase the contrast is in things like the metal. So let's walk through the natural, sort of the natural situation of what's occurring here. If we're being hit by a bunch of overexposed light, then very bright light creates very strong shadows, right? That's just the nature of the thing. If you're outside on a bright sunny day, you generally will see a very well-defined shadow on the ground beneath you. Whereas if you're walking around in your house under a soft luminescent bulb overhead, you don't generally see a shadow above you, right? Or sorry, a shadow below you. I hope you don't see a shadow above you. Otherwise, your house is haunted. Get out. What are you doing? No. So I think where we had the opportunity here was to really take some deep contrast into the things like the metals, which would naturally have ultra high reflections, but then also have really deep shadows in them. If you've ever flashed a piece of metal against something that's really bright, then it's going to create a really dark shadow on the part of metal that's facing away from the light source. On the similar side, with things that aren't the skin, where you want it to be real pale and overexposed, so things like the blue, sort of that navy blue, which I'm not sure about that powder blue, that sort of acid wash jeans blue, but compositionally there's nothing clashing about it. I'm just not sure about it, so I'll leave that to the side. But at any rate, I would have pushed the contrast on that a lot, right? Like really brought the shadows on that. Think down beneath the musculature, tucked in here under the keeper's legs, right? Here on the undersides of the canary, where they have those, the deep hidden folds. Really shadow those, right? Then those extreme darks would make the lights pop a lot more. So that's my thought there overall. Cool. But yeah, love it. And I'm always happy to see more Slaanesh in the world. Nothing wrong with that at all. I never want to take my Slaanesh to a tournament ever again because they summon too much stuff. It's annoying. Now let us play the smallest violin ever. Okay, so next up we've got Darcy Bono. And we've got the Hellbriars. So we got a nice Beasts of Chaos army. All right, so this is a very fun army. Lots of gray tones and a sort of ashy complexion in the skin of the beasts, which is really cool. Lots of great freehand work throughout this army. I certainly don't have a checklist of things that I'm looking for when I'm, judging. Like, there are generally, the events will have paint checklists. And a checklist, that's to determine your score for painting for overall. When I do my judging, I don't use that checklist. I use, like, the checklist determines who's in the top cut, and then I go in and do what I do. And there's nothing in my sort of examination of an army that says you have to have freehand, or you have to have non-metallic metal, or not have non-metallic metal, or have OSL. None of those things matter. What I'm looking for is execution, right? So if you're going to use freehand, then cool, execute it well. If you're going to use OSL, execute it well. And do something interesting with it that makes the army stand out. As I always say, the thing that I want to see most in an army is the 10-1-1 rule be satisfied, right? I want you to get my interest at 10 feet, so the army should read well from that kind of distance. I want you to have my attention at 1 foot, where I go, oh, okay, this looks really good now that I'm up close. Let me get even closer. And I want you to amaze me at 1 inch when I go in and find the small details. That's how you want to take best painted. That's follow that on everything you do, and effectively you'll get there. So, a lot of great stuff here, like the freehand and stuff like the banner. Let's jump forward and we'll see some stuff. Here we've got our big Doom Bowl. Really nice overall. You can see the sort of scorch mark fire tattoo type things on a lot of them. Our old, whatever. He was the standard bearer. He had a specific name back, but I can't remember what it is. But this is a great model, obviously. A wonderful freehand on the banner there. Fits right in. Here we've got our Beast Lord. Beast Lord. Some more Minotaurs. Good stuff. Nice tattoos. Good choice in the red fur. Big old Cygor. I like how he's carrying the heat throughout. That is to say, like, you look at the marks in the rock. I think that looks really nice. The glow in the rock and stuff like that. Of course, the big Gorgon. So again, really good. Nice transition there on that. Here we've got some of our gore and our nice little sacrificial altar, the herd stone, ready to burn up some Ungor. A little Bray Shaman. Our Ungor, who are undoubtedly ready for the Pyre, even though they don't know it. Again, good freehand on stuff like the banner on the shield there. It looks really nice. Yeah. So overall, my thoughts on this army are a lot of this is executed to a really high level, and I like it. This is a really nice army. It's really well thought out. I love the fiery colors set against the grays and blacks and very neutral tones. So I think that works well. We're very much in a warm palette with the fire and the leather and things like that, and in a cold palette with the cold blue ashy sort of skin, which I think looks really nice. My basic feedback would be I would love to see a little more TLC spent on some of these models. Some of their, like, again, they lack some contrast. So, like, when I look at, it comes out the most when I look at things like the Gorgon and this guy. This is a really big model. There's a lot going on. I'd love to see more color worked in here. Like, have some subtle tones in the transitions, higher highlights up on the top. There's not really that much of a highlight difference between what's here on the top of the Gorgon's shoulders and what's here on the top of his tucked away abdomen. These would have very different amounts of light, right? It comes out in stuff like the leather strappy straps here. So you'll see that on the Cygor. Let's go back to the Cygor. The leather strappy straps around the arm. These are a nice chance to flex, because this is the kind of thing I look to discover at an inch when I come in and I see, like, never miss an opportunity to flex with, especially with a model I'm definitely going to spend a lot of time looking at because it's huge. Your Cygor, your Gorgon, these are two centerpieces of your army. So flex for me. Show me what you got, right? And having the leather have light edges and texture and stuff like that, where the edge looks worn and there's texture across the leather, that would do a lot of work for me. Okay, boom, you did something there, right? You really caught my attention. Working more colors into the subtle shadows. So, like, you've told me you have this cold blue skin, right? And you've got cold highlights. Cool, show me some purple in the shadows. Maybe pick out the veins in a little more pronounced fashion, right? Do a little more work with the teeth and the tongue and the gums. Like, he has this big, giant, pronounced mouth, and there's not really too much color variance in there. It's kind of boring, right? So it's that kind of stuff I'd want to see that would really, push me over the edge. With things like with things like the Minotaurs here, what I think my biggest issue with them is I'd love to see a little more pop out on some of the fur, a little more pop out on some of their skin. Again, so it's just contrast, right? It's pushing those values more and giving me a lot more visual interest, where I see the way that's traveling. Another thing you've got an opportunity with is things like fur and hair, where they can they can vary in color more. That's what I'll say, right? Like, it's very uniform, all of that fur. So, but overall, this is a really great force. It really is a wonderful army. It does do some amazing things. The freehand work looks fantastic. The composition is wonderful. The basing looks really good. Lots of good variants there. Carries through that themes. This is a very well done army, and this would certainly be, in like a world of something like Adepticon, I have to imagine an army like this would absolutely make the cut and be up amongst the top contenders. So I think that's absolutely a great accomplishment. Jaegerbomb in the comments real quick asked, are they only showing off the Age of Sigmar items right now? Yeah. This was AOS Coach organized this, and so all the armies I only judged the AOS event, and so all the armies we submitted in were for AOS armies. That is a good idea. In the future, when I do these again, and we just do kind of like a armies on review parade I'll give you feedback and we'll pick some winners and stuff like that and whatever. However, we decide to organize this going forward, because as I said at the beginning, for those of you who might not have joined yet at that point in time, I think this is really cool. I love that everybody submitted these armies and wants to share them with everybody. I want to do this again under happier circumstances where we're not doing it simply because an event got canceled and we're all stuck in our homes. I want to do it because I want to do it because it's fun, and because there's lots of people who put tons of hours into their army and love and passion and blood and sweat and tears, and then never go to an event, and it'll give them a chance to show off all their hard work. So right now I'm going through this as though I was judging it at Adepticon. I probably won't do that when we do this in the future. I don't know. I'll figure out exactly what people are comfortable with, because I don't ever want to make anybody feel bad. That's never the goal of this. I'm pretty straightforward. I don't want to ever be mean, so please, if you're one of the people who submitted an army, please don't ever take it that way. I only mean all this with love and the best charity I can. You're awesome human beings for doing this, and your armies are all amazing. But we're going to do this again under happier circumstances, and we'll format like what are the types of pictures I have to have and what format they have to be in and where you get to do, and then we'll share them. We'll do a video like this, a hangout, and we'll look at everybody's army. I think this sounds like a super fun thing to do. I would have never thought of this had Adepticon not been canceled, and had AOS Coach not come to me with this fantastic idea. So big thanks to Coach. As I mentioned at the beginning, you can find all the rest of the events for the Adepticon at Home weekend down in the description after this video goes live. There's a full schedule of everybody who's streaming across the channels, and we'll go from there. Okay, so if you didn't get your army in this time, we're going to do more in the future, and you'll have a chance to submit your finished army, and there you go. Yeah, so it'll be a great chance for people who never go to events to do that. Somebody asked, who was this? This is Darcy Bono, Meth. Alrighty, next up, David Griffin, bringing us a really unique project. He only had 4 pictures, but trust me, you're going to love them. So this is his army, his cities, Sigmar army, obviously. So we start out here with our Knight Azeros, and obviously some bow boys, some castigators or judicators or whatever he's going for here. I don't know exactly, but obviously some of those dudes. So I love the way these are colored. Really nice. The blue and gray and then the bright yellow all looks really nice together. But the big, good head swaps, great stuff there. Really nice bases of the sort of cityscape that I think tell a good story. But now we're getting into the exciting stuff. So we have our Huracanum with being pulled by the big Dracoth, as it were. His sorcerer is the old Bretonnian damsel, and then his shadow warriors are all sneaky halflings, which you've got to appreciate. There's one real elf in the mix. I assume he's just telling the rest of the halflings what to do, which makes sense. The rest of the halflings are known for being very quiet, very stealthy. That's a thing. So they can certainly follow that shadow warrior right along. And then, of course, boom, all the pistoliers. That's right. It's halflings with guns. So he has all these wonderful halflings that he collected and then mounted them up on Griffhounds, which is truly an amazing conversion. It's a heck of an army. And then, of course, the general and Griffin there in the center. What a wonderfully fun unit, right? Just absolutely great. Very eye-catching, very unique, and very clean, well-executed paint on these guys. I like the color variation on the Griffhounds and on, the bird itself there, obviously looking like a straight-up, bald eagle. The Griffin there in the center or whatever. So, good stuff. One of the things I will say about this, here you go, we'll move to the whole army shot. There we go. And then I can kind of talk about it overall. So I think, David, what I would challenge you with in the future with armies like this is still much the same. We could push the contrast here a little farther. One thing you want to be careful with, David, is you use the yellow, and I like the yellow in this context, but it needs to be a little more diffuse. So you're using yellow as a pop color, but you're not actively spreading it far enough. So like the wings, for example, of your Knight of Zeros, or the magic on the bridge, or in some of the Griffhounds, I would love to see you have a little bit more of that yellow spread around throughout the army as your pop color. A few more gems, a few more freehand symbols, a few more, just little things to sneak it in there. Patterns and dots on some of the Griffhounds. Maybe some of the other Griffhounds have yellow stripes, right? Things like that to make it feel consistent in color, because right now it's very eye-catching, and there's not enough of it to balance it out. Like, your eyes get locked onto particular figures, and that's challenging. The other thing I would say is I'd love to see a little more contrast on stuff like the Griffhounds. They look really good. I think you did a good job with them. I mean, I know David's been painting this with a brand new, like, 7-month-old baby that I'm sure he's spending a lot of time with. So, it's not like David doesn't have a full life, but yeah, David's a great painter. I know he can put in there. So that's what I would say. A little more contrast on things like the Griffhounds, especially their feathered parts, where those should be quite varied. And things like the gray armor on the Stormcast. Again, some deeper shadows. Even if they're soft shadows, they need a little bit more of a deeper color in there. But overall, this is a really, really glorious vision for an army brought to life. So I absolutely love it. And it's a lot of halfling pistoliers. I support that. Okay. Next up, Jenn Martin. Jenn is going to bring us a whole lot of squigs. So I'm just going to cycle through and kind of talk as I cycle through these, because there is a lot of squigs here. A lot of squig photos. We start with our World Star squig photo here. And then we'll go. So here's the full army shot. As you can see, lots and lots of squiggies. Squiggies everywhere. Good stuff. I'm just going to cycle through and kind of talk. So overall, what I'll say about this is I love this is a riot of colors. Like, it is a color riot. It is a zoot suit riot. But I don't think that's too overtly problematic in an army like this. That is to say, it's these kinds of armies can often be bright and somewhat crazy, and I think that's all right. The photos are overexposed. That's one of the things that's making it hard on our eyes right now, is that there's way too much white light in the photos, and so that's making it kind of hard to take in. I don't think that's actually a problem with the colors on the army. I think it's just a challenge with the photos. So putting that to the side. Lots of fun little conversions with the Nurglings here also joining in the fun, becoming honorary goblins. My biggest pushback on this one is going to be kind of much the same of what I said before, with a little bit of a twist. So we do have a lot of opportunities here for more contrast, especially on the big models like the Manglers and stuff like that. When you look at a shot like this, the Manglers are just very red, and they don't have a lot of deep tones or high tones, right? They're very much just like one solid color, bang. And you're using a lot of bright primary colors, which, again, I don't have a problem with necessarily. We can use bright, intense, saturated colors. There's nothing wrong with that. But we do need to still have some kind of shadows and highlights. And with reds, it's a great color to use to be very saturated, because you can use, your shadows can go into purple or brown or black or whatever, and then your highlights can just be really, really, really bright, intensely saturated red. And that's fine. The other thing I would say is, again, I mentioned it earlier, never pass up an opportunity to do something amazing, especially on big centerpiece models. I love the conversion of little Nurgling with the wings, almost looking like the little servitors that the Sisters of Battle use, which I don't know if those are the wings from the servitor or not. If they are, great call. Holding on very tightly to the Mangler. And, you can see all the Nurglings, by the way, here throughout, replacing all the goblins, which is just really such a fun thing. You'll notice a bunch of them sort of hidden throughout here. Obviously, there's still a few normal goblins hiding out in, say, Squig's mouths and stuff, but most of the goblins have become Nurglings, which I do think works real well. But, when it comes to the big Manglers or the regular Squigs, I think, having things like demon dots or stripes or patterns of any kind on there would really be amazing. So, don't miss an opportunity like that to do that fun stuff, especially when you've already put so much amazing effort into bright colors and really eye-catching stuff going on in conversions with all your Nurglings. I mean, this is a really, really beautiful, accomplishment, because all these Nurglings just hiding out as honorary goblins, right? Which they do look very much like little goblins. I think is just such a wonderful conversion idea. I've never really seen anybody go that far before, and I think it's, honestly a really cool concept. You have gone super deep into color, and I think that yeah, I mean it's cool. Just we could go that next step, especially on the big models. So there's my thoughts. Hope you enjoy, gentlemen. So thank you again to Jenn. This is a really, really fantastic force. Okay, next up, Jimbo of Mitzi and Jimbo bring us an army. So we're going to go... I'll have to come back, I think, to two of these photos, because two of them it's not going to let me show, so I have to open them. Actually, hold on. Let me open with... Nope, it's not going to let me do it. Okay, that's fine. I'll open those in a second with something different that I know I can. Okay, so here we have the converted Celestant Prime, made out of, what's his name? The Primarch guy whose name eludes me that they released recently. Oh, oops. Here we've got our kitty caters. We're just going to kind of spin through them all. Obviously, Jimbo went for a all non-metallic force, so really leaning into the non-metallic gold in a big, big way. And then again, gold and purple. We talked about that before. It's a great color combo. I like the pop color of green here. I think that works really nicely. I think that's an excellent addition. That sort of neon fluorescent green with the purple, I think, is really nice. Oops. Let's stop on the whole army shot here so we can just all take that in for a moment. It's a really, really great army. Lots of really catchy for the eye. Really, really high contrast. Thank you, Sanguinius. Yes, thank you very much, people. I appreciate that. Somebody clarified what the Primarch was. Here's our Griff Charger boys or whatever they are. And then just some action shots on the beautiful display board he made. Okay, so general with of course the much needed comment in there. So let's go back to a few of these guys. Now there's a shot in here that's really gonna sort of talk about. I'll use this shot to give feedback on the general army. Because I think this is where I would talk. I don't have a problem with non-metallic metal being used on an army. I think it's perfectly fine. So there's two people in here who did that. It can look good. Great. Good stuff. I think this is well executed. I would love to see more mid-tone in your non-metallic. A lot of your gold is very brown. You're missing the ochre tone being as strong as it could be. You have 1, 3, 4, 5 in this gold. You're missing a 2. Okay. Now, here's where we come to the big challenge of contrast. And here's one of the only times I've ever had to say this. Jimbo, you have too much contrast in your cloth. This may be the first time I've ever had to actually say this to someone. But the cloth comes up to pure white and goes down to almost black. the cloth at this, like, looking at her really exemplifies this. The purple cloth, which I'm going to assume is satin or silk or something highly reflective, is portrayed here on equal levels of reflection of bright polished gold. Now, I've seen some real silky reflective satins, right? But they don't get that reflective. They're not polished gold like my ring reflective, right? And so the challenge is we actually over highlighted this. So you've got to be careful where you set your highlights. By taking the purple up to pure white, you made the cloth as reflective as the metal, and it's not, right? So even just a very thin glaze over that, like super thin, like a filter even, to knock the white out of the cloth would help so much. It'd take you right back into line. Like you'd be perfect. If instead of going to white in the cloth, we just went to ultra bright purple, we'd be perfect. We'd have silk, right? So that's kind of something I noticed here when I was looking at this. It's almost hard to read some of these guys because you have so much, like, this is another good shot to see it. Like, you can really see what I'm talking about here. Like, all of the purple appears just as metallic as the metal because you're running the reflections way up into the same level, right? So, like, if we took that down, even with just a filter of purple over top, we'd snap back into place. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. So, the other thing I would say is, I don't know that I love the gold swords. Yeah. In fact, I don't love the gold swords. Like, I understand these guys have a lot of gold. Apparently, these dudes are all the bad guy from Austin Powers 3. They love gold. But I would argue that, like, when it comes to something like that, you've got to be careful of what people's expectations are. And, like, we expect a sword blade to be made of a different material than the hilt it's sitting in. We just have a subconscious bias about that, right? It would be like if you painted all of the cloth gold. Well, yeah, that's possible, right? Like, you can wear gold lame. Like, that's a thing that exists. You can have gold cloth. But if you have gold cloth next to gold armor, we're going to be like, wait, what? That doesn't look right. You know, something seems wrong there, right? And so I would love to see those in just, honestly, those should have just been the same green energy effects as you've used in lots of other places here. Like you did some of the weapons in the green. The sword blade should just be that same green. So there you go. But overall, cool stuff, man. I mean, it's a beautiful army. You must have spent a outrageous amount of time on it. So I do want to give you mad props for finishing the army. Your light reflections and your light usage looks really nice. Work on glazing in more midtones, more reds and yellows in there. That way we add a little bit more color and hue back in and get out of too much of just the browns. There you go. Yeah, so there you go. But awesome work, Jimbo. I dig it. All right. Jordan Duncan bringing us a pretty cool display of some Ideneth Deepkin. So he's actually got some LEDs here in his display board. And by the way, this is what I was talking about earlier when, like, if you're going to do something fabricated, it needs to be very precision, right? Like, if it's not just wild. And here I think Jordan certainly accomplishes that. I do like the little glowing LED lights hidden around the thing. Like the carving and lines and stuff in this display board, I think, look really good. So well done there. I like the Volturnus. I know this isn't Volturnus, but I like this model. Seahorse guy up on top of the rock, although it does kind of look like his seahorse got real attracted to that crystal. And he is trying his best to get him to go back to fighting, but we'll leave that to the side. So there's a great total shot of the army. All in all, I think this is really nice. I like the display. I like the glowing lights. I love the fact that centerpiece character actually has like a glowing LED in him, I think is pretty awesome. The turtle is balancing oh so precariously, which I love. Like, look at how he has this turtle up here. It's amazing. That's great. That feels like it's flying. Like, that is a wonderful minimal contact balance. So this is really good. The paintwork is super duper clean, which I think is great. I like everything here looks really nice. This is just solid work. What I think I would say to you, Jordan, is this is great. I would love to see you push it just a little more with especially some of your big models. So let's I'll make this real for you, Jordan. Let's go into the individual photos here, and I'll talk for a second and kind of individually. So when it comes to these guys right here, you know, they're fine. They're well executed. They're clean. Good variation. I'd love to see maybe a little bit of more on the weapons than kind of the cream with just edge highlighting, but it works. It works. Overall, the Namarti, thumbs up. No, I have no issues there. It'd be great if I could see some tattoos or something on the side of their head. Like, again, you wanna amaze me when I get to an inch? Show me some tattoos on the side of their head. All right, they have these great big bald heads, always begging for a tat. Where's the turtle? Mr. Turtle. I like turtles. Here we go. Okay. The turtle's a great chance where I felt like we could have gone farther. He's got lots of scales, lots of space. I like the dude jumping. I like his positioning. But he's kind of flat. Right? We got a big red shell. We don't have a way, like, we don't have any... Turtle shells are so cool. We can do lots of really cool patterns. You have something kind of minimal there, but doesn't really stand out. We could have really popped that shell. Same with the howdah on the back. A little bit more into that. Same with the turtle skin, right? Like, I like the general transition, but then we don't have anything on, like, the edges of the individual scales. They don't have any variation across the edge of all the little scales, right? That kind of thing. So, and then finally on the boss, where's he at? There he is. I like the few individual darker scales, but again, like, something that transitioned on his tail in some way into a different color. Having his mane be a different color than the body of the thing itself, right? Having maybe a couple rows of different color scales, like either in an actual pattern, like maybe a diamond pattern of different scintillating scales of that teal or something like that. Little things like that go a really long way to making the army stand out. But overall, this is really, really fantastic. Like, it's great, it's clean, it's well executed, it's a good vision, it's a beautiful display board. So, yeah. Well done, Jordan. Okay. Next up, Shoe. Mark Shoemaker, Shoe from Rerolling Ones. Okay, so he's bringing us a whole lot of Pahenix Guard. I think that's how you pronounce that, right? All right. So, here we go. Obviously, we can see some conversions like in the Sorceress there. So we're just going to flip through some images here and take a look. Nice color choices overall. You know, really, you know, good execution. Very bright Phoenix. So, yeah, good stuff. Obviously, good Phoenix Temple army. Good anointed and stuff like that. So here's my overall feedback for you, Shu. First thing, throw these GW metal paints you're using in the garbage so you stop getting pitting like this and texture like this. I'm just going to use this as an opportunity, as always, to say Vallejo metal color. It's what you should be using. But at any rate, when I come to the... Where's my big shot of the Phoenix? There we go. Okay, these are the guys. This is the shot I wanted. So, this is really nice and cleanly executed. It looks good. I do have some challenges here of, like, elements that feel like they could be doing more. This army has a lot of metal on it, right? And metal as just steel and gold is boring, right? And so what I would encourage you to do is, when I see stuff like this, I want to see more contrast on the metal. Work with inks and shades and edge highlighting and stuff like that to treat the true metallic metal in a non-metallic metal style, where I would see more shading and highlighting across the thing. Like her helmet up here, her face mask, that should have like a light point here and then treated like a sphere that it gets darker and then be a light line down the center and then have some reflective lights here and be in shadow. And all that should be captured with, you know, various inks and stuff like that. Same with like, if we look at things like their weapons and their helms, right? What we would see around these Phoenix helms is like a deeper shadow. And you don't want to do this with washes. You don't want to wash metal. That just kills your metal. You want to do it with controlled mixes of the color of metal paint and dark ink. And you really want to work that down there and make sure there's a nice dark line and then have a silver edge to each of them where the light is catching. In the same way that when I hold my ring up to the light, which is made of gold, like that looks like a white silver reflection, right? Where it's catching the bright light above me. Okay. So, and same with the weapons, right? Like the weapons are just silver. They're just big flat hunks of silver. You know, I would love, again, like treat that like a non-metallic surface where you're running a shadow up to one side, highlight or whatever, you know, at minimum, and then light at the other end, and then opposing light and shadow. That's the simplest form of that. But you can go a lot farther, obviously, right? So just in general, seeing that contrast really pop out there on metals, metals look brighter when you add more darkness to them. Okay. But overall, man, this is a good looking force. I think you did a great job overall. The Phoenix looks really nice. I thought that came out really well. Like the Phoenix itself. I would like to see maybe a little more orange in there. We have a bit too much yellow saturation and not enough orange. So, like, assuming you're trying to actually look like fire, fire doesn't have this much yellow. Fire is much more orange. The transition into your red-black is really good. You didn't, you know, it's not Ferrari red or something like that. So, that's A+. I just would love to see a little more orange tones, deep orange tones throughout there. Okay. Yeah. Oh, people asking what I meant by the metal. Sorry, I'm trying to occasionally look at the comments here. So, do you see this do you see this coarse surface? This is called bad metal pigment. This is what GW metals are, right? Where the pigment is not ground fine enough, and so you can see texture in it. That's what I'm talking about. You want, you know, the various error things, but especially Vallejo metal color, you won't have that happen. So there you go. Okie dokie. But great job, Shu. Cool army. Alrighty. Where are we at? There we go. Martin Orlando. All right. Martin. He did a big converted death army here. So we're just going to kind of scroll through. And we'll take a look at what he's got. As we can see it all on the display board. Did a nice display board. Saw him build it up on Twitter over time. Here we've got his Blood Knights, which he obviously, all these are, you know, real heavily converted. So good stuff there. Because who wants the real Blood Knights? That's going to be a hard pass for me. Plus, he wanted more of the Viking sort of theme to all this. So I think that's clearly captured well here. Here's his Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, which is the Magma Dragon, which I've never liked and think is a very, very silly looking figure. But I'm not going to hold that against Martin. I would never take my own personal, how much I think a figure looks silly is never factors into my decisions. But I mean, you know, let's be honest, this Magma Dragon looks silly. But nonetheless, Martin did a great job with the conversion of the big Vampire Lord there out of the Blight King body and stuff like that. There he is, a little tighter up. Here's his Vampire Lord with wings. Again, out of a Wrathmonger or whatever, Skull Reaper, whichever one. The Chaos Sorceress or whatever, showing up as the Necromancer. Because you want it to be more like a living thing, you know, this sort of dark Viking theme, which I get. And then old Archon the Black. Zoom in on the Blood Knights. And, yep. Got our Grave Guard. Our ghosty boys here. We got to have some spooky chain rasps. And there we go. So, yes, even Martin just said in the comments, yes, it is a silly dragon. Glad you agree, Martin. He does kind of look like Toothless. That's just somebody said he looks like Toothless. He does. Overall, Martin, this is a good force. There's a couple things though, however, that I would challenge you on throughout this force. I know you've moved on, and I know you're excited for your Lumineth. So, A plus. I can't wait to see what you do with the Lumineth, buddy. Things I noted. Okay. One. I'm just gonna hit you with some rapid fire. We're gonna go back to the beginning here. Oops, not that far. First, big old magma dragon. You have this big giant dragon. He's a zombie dragon, theoretically. That's fine. He looks very like your eyes and the color feel like when the Night King or whatever rezzed one of the dragons in Game of Thrones. Like that probably is what you're going for, I assume. And which one was it? Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't matter. He later got involved in a video game boss fight, so it wasn't that fun. My biggest challenge here is like this guy is boring. Like the dragon itself is boring. You've got all this space. Like look out here on this arm out here. And it's just that color. That's it. Right? Same with like around his muzzle, in his mouth. All of this is just kind of that color. What I would love to see there is more variation. Like, give me some different tones up here in between the skin. Like, if you look at my hand, there's all sorts of different tones in there, right? There's reds and blues where you can see veins and arteries and stuff like that, right? It's the same thing there for that, especially on a big centerpiece model like this. The last thing you ever want is for a main piece like this to be boring, right? So again, could be dots, could be a pattern. He could change color going toward his hands. You could take a pin vise at the beginning and you could start drilling stuff out of it to create holes and dead spaces and do muscle and texture underneath. You could put tattoos and runes that show how he's magically animated. You could do 100 things. I don't care what they are. Just do something, right? Especially on what is supposed to be the model I care about the most. Same within his mouth. Like, there's not a lot going on in there. It's kind of like, yep, that's a big magenta thing. And it's got a little bit of color on the edge of the tongue and muscles underneath. Like, that's a chance to do some spit going between the two of them, to have maybe a little bit of deeper colors in there. Show me some more purples. Show me some dots on the tongue. It's big enough he might have visible taste buds. Right? Like, tongues. Huh? You know? Catch that. That tongue is like 6 feet long. Right? So, that kind of thing. Similarly on... Where's it at? Here we go. On these guys, like, their shields are so boring, man. What happened there? They're just purple. It's like, they're just purple. I don't get it. Everything else has so much great contrast, and then the shields are just like a flat color. And I don't know why. So that kind of mystified me. I didn't get it. Like, these need a freehand or a something. Patterns, rust, streaks, all of the above would really be what I would prefer to see, right? And same thing, by the way, here on stuff like this banner. Like, okay, cool, good freehand, little Celtic thing. That's cool. But then, like, there's basically no tonal variation up and down the thing. It doesn't get that much brighter down here, where it would be thinner, where it would be frayed. Show me texture. Show me where the cloth is worn. Big banners like this drag on the ground all the time, right? Because he'd be lowering it as he's writing. So show me worn thread and texture and stuff like that, right? With the Graveguard, these guys, same thing. Like, these are dead skeletons. You've portrayed them as very old through the weathering and the oxidation, and yet their red down here has no dirt. These guys have been walking on pristine floors for the whole time they've been wearing these clothes, which I would assume is their entire undead existence, right? Why don't I have, like, pigment and dirt and weathering down at the bottom, right? Same with their feet, like, they're that kind of stuff. Like, there's dirt, clearly you've shown me down here. There's living things. So, like, there should be pigment and dirt and dust on their feet. That kind of stuff. I think the chain rasps are good. I think they're a nice unit. I'd love to see some of those blends smoothed out a little bit. So we still got to work on the glazes. Like some of the places where we go into the bright white, I can still see that being quite stark. So yeah, overall, but I mean, it's a great looking army. Like I know you put a lot of effort into the conversions. I like them all. Yeah, I think you did a nice job. Okay. Mitzi, the other half of Mitzi and Jimbo. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through again and I'll talk because it's going to be very similar to some other things that I've said here. So overall, I'm always a fan of a good Iron Jaws army. I do love how Mitzi was unafraid to use bright colors again. Like, heck yeah, boars can be blue. So that's cool. Bright blue, bright yellow. Wonderful stuff. I have no issue with any of that. Again, we have some overexposed photos here, so c'est la vie. That's just the way it goes. But the my basic challenge with this Mitzi is largely in the tonal variation area. So when I look at like the Mega Boss, he's so blue. And like that's it. He's just blue. Abba di abba die. Like, why do I not have purples and deeper colors and shadows and highlights on the edge of the scales and more patterns? Like, you've got a little bit of striping in there, but like, why? Never leave the one of the things that I would always recommend against is like any large area that's just one solid color is generally not going to be is generally not going to be great. You want to have tonal variation, right? So again, create some transitions in there where his hands have purples and reds, or anything. You do lots of different tricks. Again, he could have WA symbols literally war painted on him. He could put war paint over it, right? Like the Mega Boss walks out there and like puts some war paint on this bad boy beforehand, and that could look really cool. So there's lots of different ways you can go with it. Just don't do nothing. That's what I would say. When it comes to like the armor, I understand you want it to be kind of old, rusted armor, but what you have to avoid there is it being kind of flat, boring armor, which is what we get to. In general, a lot of the armor is kind of flat. It just doesn't have the variation I would want to see. Yes, I get it. It's black, sort of black and burnt punched iron. We can still do stuff with that. Then in which case, pop up the weathering. Show me some really brown, rusty spots with some good orangey orange, rust creeping across it, hitting on the edges, stuff like that. Like, do something with that space. Same with the orc skin. It needs more deeper greens, more pinks, things of that nature to really pop out and grab me. Somebody asked who did the non-metallic metal Slanesh army at CanCon. Oh geez, you'll have to. I'll ask. If you ask, Clint, on Twitter, he'll be able to tell you. So that would be my advice. I know his name and I just can't think of it right now. Sorry. Okay. All right. So that's my basic advice for you, Mitzi, is, big more variation. Also, when you put stuff like grass on a base, still paint it. Like, you don't have to paint it completely, but like drop some wash in there, stuff like that. Just makes it look more aligned. Otherwise, it becomes too flat of a single color. All right, so we've got 2 from Oscar Lars because he gave me both the army that he was going to use for his team as well as for the GT, so his 1K army and his 2K army. So I'm just going to kind of roll through all of it, and we'll take a look. Okay. So first off, Archaon, with obviously new Archaon, whatever. Big boy, the Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, the Lord of the End Times. So really nice force. I like the Chaos Warriors. I enjoy the flamey flames on the banner. I think those look cool. So I think that looks really nice. Yeah, overall these guys are great. Obviously it's funny to have a 1K force that's like 3 units. Just Archeon and 2 units of Chaos Warriors. 1,000 points. Job's a good one. 2 battle line and a leader. What more do you need? Yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is good, Oscar. Um, it's nice. It's really high end work. It doesn't it doesn't blow me away. That is to say, like, I feel like there's real opportunities here, especially with things like the cloaks, to have more texture on there, more variation in it. A lot of the armor is like the edge highlights are doing a lot. Those like big thick edge highlights are doing a lot of work in a lot of cases. Um, I'd love to see more white light lines get caught, light catches and stuff like that. I think you did a good job of still making it seem black. Some of the edges look really big and sort of ostentatious, so I would shrink some of those back down, and some of the blends need to be smoothed out, right? Especially on some of like the forward-facing legs. Uh, but you know, I mean, overall, this is a very cool force. The Archeon looks really good. I think it's a very solid force. Yeah, good stuff. Now let's take a look at his 2K force, which is mind-boggling. The 2K force is quite fantastic. So this is obviously a Nurgle force, so we'll zoom in here so we can see all the detail. Lots of rusting and weathering, and lots of tonal variation. Great tones and colors in the skin. Can see all the like pinks and greens and purple and the buboes and the welts and warts and stuff like that. That is really, really looking good. Good, fully rusted out weapons. Stuff like that. Great use of oxidation and hidden in your shadows. So if you look at a lot of his copper tones and stuff like that, he's got the Nilic and the turquoise colors hidden down in the shadows, acting as an almost reflective color as a trick to the eye, which I think really helps to sell them. Things like the bell and stuff, the reflections are caught really, really well done on. Obviously, all of this is non-metallic metal, so like none of this is actual metal paint. So it's well captured, which does lead to my one piece of feedback. I actually had seen this army in person at Nova last year. It is a fantastic looking army. And the thing I will say is I don't love the white edges around the completely rusted out weapons, especially not as a full edge. That doesn't work. Like the whole weapon rusted through to complete orange, but then the edge of it is so bright it's reflecting silver light. That doesn't work, right? Like that's not how rusted things work. So in the case of some of the weapons where you would have had, like the edges should just be really bright orange against then moving into the brown. Like that's how you should be doing it if you want to catch those edges. Now on the cutting edge, if you want to show scrapes away and have a couple of bits of white and then go into a dull gray silver beneath that where it had like scraped deep and then went up and out, so we can imagine it going deep in and then cutting away, then that I would dig on. But things like the white all the way around that axe, it just doesn't work. So there you go. It's literally the one piece of feedback I had for this army. Other than that, it's a stunner. So we'll just keep looking at it. That's what we're gonna do, because it's a great looking army and I want to share it with everybody. You can look at all the variation he's got here. You look at things like the horns. You again like look at this body here, how where it's rotten away. In this case, it goes into black. This horrendous black dead flesh, like jeez oh Pete's. But then in other places he'll use red and purple. So let me see if I can re-explain the white on the blade, because somebody had said I like the edge on the blade. I don't mind it here on this edge because that makes sense. This is where it cuts, so it would push away rust. It doesn't make sense completely surrounding the blade. This part of the blade hasn't cut anything. It's against the hilt where he holds it with his hand. It wouldn't be white. So that's the explanation is what I'm going for here, right? I'm okay with rust being cleaned away to reveal polished metal, where it makes sense that the weapon would come in contact with other things. There you go. At any rate, going back to the army. Great conversions all over the place, like the goo effects, the blood effects in the base, just tons of dead bodies and stuff like that in the bases. I think these might be the secret weapon bases. I don't know. There's a whole nice shot of the army. You can see he has all sorts of this. He has all sorts of wonderful things in there, including a beautifully converted herald back here. Somehow I'll keep going because I think we haven't gotten to him yet. This wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Great Unclean One made out of the Forge World Great Unclean One. Here are his trees, which again are converted with the big, insane, googly eyes and tentacles coming out of them. This is a nightmare thing. This is truly a thing from a nightmare. And, like, the goo in the mouth around the teeth. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, people. When I say give me something that amazes me when I get to an inch away, this army is full of it. Every fig. Every fig I found something, right? Like, notice that he converted the tree, he gave it this weird face, then he did these beautiful eyes, and then he has this Nurgle's Rock goo being the vitreous humors of the eyes. Right? Like, that's lunacy. Okay? That's what I say when I mean amaze me at an inch. Okay? Yeah, here we go. So here's the Great Unclean One. Big old Forge World guy. Looking really nice. That rotten meat flesh showing through definitely looks like that. It's, yep, that's pretty hideous. Pretty hideous. In all the best ways. Oh, here we go. Here's the actual guy here. This is his herald or whatever. Yeah. So all in all, this is a really, really gorgeous army. Obviously, lots of love and care. Oh, yeah, can't forget about the Glocken. How could we forget about Big Papa Glot? Who's done in a different color scheme. Like, he's out in the purple, whereas a lot of them are in more of the green skin. He's more like a big, giant human to separate him from the Great Unclean One, which I truly do like. I think it sets him apart well. Lots of little touches. All the Nurglings playing in the blood down there and splashing around and up on him. Great goop in the mouth and things like that. It's just, this is a true masterpiece of an army from Oscar. So there you go. Okay. Next up, Pat Carroll. Pat Carroll brings us some Iduneth Deepkin. So really fun stuff here. I'm just going to cycle through. Really nice execution on these guys. Paint looks really clean, well applied. Good bright colors and contrasts. Really looking like sea creatures. Yeah, it's really nice. So my biggest advice for you would be much what I've said sort of many times. First off, the bases are really boring. It's kind of that, GW, like, mud and two tufts. Like, it's not doing much for me, especially not when this is supposedly, like, an underwater army that comes with a whole bunch of stuff to just glue on your bases, like fishies and things like that. So, do something with the bases. Secondly, what I would say is, again, when it comes to things like the eels, you've got a chance for patterns. They have these big, long, boring bodies. You did a nice color. I like the contrast, but then of, like, that is to say the color contrast of the orange and the blue. But, like, give me some more there. Give me some patterns. Give me some stuff, on the side, right? Show me something interesting there. Sea creatures are so varied and amazing. Just Google, like, underwater eels and sharks and fish, and just, you'll see these incredible patterns and colors and, just everything amazing that you can find. And just grab that and put that onto your models, right? Like, in any way that you can. And that's really going to do so much to make your army stand apart. So that would be my my main piece of advice for you. But overall, this is a great army that I think looks really nice. Okay, next up, Stuart Gately. Yes, with his Maw tribes. So let's bring these boys up. So Stuart has a lot of doggos and some many big monster trucks, and then some Huskards or whatever, or some Mornfang. There we go. Jeez, having to remember every unit in AOS off the top of my head is certainly fun. So yeah, I mean, I'll kind of cycle through and then I'll talk about it. I do like the Ogre Cheerleader being replaced. I think that's a great conversion there. She's a lot of fun. I was going through a random boxer today and found the old metal Dwarven Blood Bowl cheerleaders I had in a box. They were still pristine. And I actually was like, oh, that's really funny. I might want to paint those someday. I'll remember I have them. So... but anyways, back to this. A couple thoughts. Again, my normal stuff would apply here. The paint's nice. I like the little additions of stuff like the Stormcast bits. It tells a nice narrative. That's very fun. When it comes to things like, pistols and those kinds of additions, do make sure that you're drilling those barrels out. I'm always going to notice it, and I will be upset if you don't drill barrels out. It's not often we have barrels that need drilled out in AOS, but I'm going to notice it. Second, I would say, again, just more tonal variation throughout the thing, right? Like the ogres need more highlights, more shadow on their flesh. Again, same thing on the bases. They're fairly boring. Here we have just like some mud and a little bit of grass. So, just you want to go a little farther there, right? And that'll really help as far as making these things more visually compelling. But overall, I like some of the conversions you had in here. I think it's very creative. I think that looks really nice. So I think that's a good instinct. It's helping to make your army unique. I think what you want to push now is your tonal variation and stuff in your contrast. Okay. Let's see. Next up, Travis Winter. I had the opportunity to not only see this army in person, but to play against Travis. So Travis has Grashrak here because he's got the forces of Nurgle. He's got some Nurgle cast. So as we flip through here, you'll see what I mean, where he's integrated a lot of Stormcast bits into his various Nurgle components. He's also got some good old skull cannons and things like that in there as allies for him. So you can see how he's integrated in the Stormcast bits. Even the old Vermin Lord, lots of options. So having seen this in person, I can say that, my basic advice for Travis remains much the same. What you ultimately want to make sure you have is your conversions are top-notch. Travis did a great job of bringing all the various elements of chaos together here into the Nurgleized force, whether it's the Lyrist, the Harpist from Slaanesh, who's now has the big, blowfly wings, the bringing the Stormcast bits in, all that kind of stuff, I think is, yeah, Bethany says having a shot every time you say tonal variation is making for a very decent afternoon. Careful, it could lead to alcohol poisoning. So yes, those kind of drinking games are a good way to accidentally pass out. At any rate, the same rule does apply here. I would love to see more tonal variation on things like their skin. When we look back at what I saw there in Oscar's Force, right? Where you saw the reds, the purples, the greens, the blacks, all of this stuff being used in the skin tones, especially bruised, diseased, bloated, gross, rotting skin. Like the sky is the limit. You can throw any color in the rainbow at that and it works. Literally. Yellow, yep. Red, yep. Orange, sure, that's just skin, right? Green, I'm good with that. Purple, yep. Blue, yep. Violet, yep. Literally, the rainbow will work on this kind of skin. Okay? And so don't hold back in that regard is what I would say. And then as well, some variation across things like the metal. Push that contrast further. Take control of that. Wow, knowing about the diet Verners we punish people with, that is a deep cut right there to know that yes, at my RPG table, diet Verners is the TPK punishment. When people die, they have to drink a diet Verners at our table, at our D&D table, because it is the worst tasting beverage in the history of beverages. But at any rate, great army, Travis. I think it looks really cool. I do very much enjoy it. Okay. So, a couple other shots that are just basically, I was given some full army shots, so I don't have as much to say because I don't have any individuals, but again, I kind of take that uh, as my own fault because we didn't really structure this since this is the first time. So, but Bradley Garrison, nice enough to include his name in here, which I enjoy. Great stuff. Good Skaven force. Again, I don't have a lot of detail shots, but from what I can see, very same rule applies. More detail. I love the fact that he's got like 4 screaming bells. That's amazing. Or sorry, 3 screaming bells and a plague furnace. I apologize. That's amazing. That's so many bell rings a turn. I love that. I really, really love that. No, it's okay, Keith. Diet Verners is the worst thing in history. Pretty much of anything. No, if you like ginger ale, it's not good ginger ale either. Just can't stop laying into it. At any rate, more tonal variation across the stuff. Like I look at the fur on the vermin lords and things like that. It's very static. Again, same colors on the little plague monkeys. They have green and red. I don't mind the Christmas colors, but they need to be more varied. I need more deep shadows, more high highlights, stuff like that. But cool force. I dig I would have loved to watch this thing go on the table with all these freaking screaming bells and vermin lords and stuff. That's nuts. It's so wonderful. Okay. Josh Arden with his first army. So this is the first army Josh put together. Again, Skaven. I love seeing all these Skaven forces, by the way. Let's zoom a little bit. Again, got the big screaming bell back there and the plague furnace up front. This is actually his shot from Holy Wars, where he was judged, as you can see, at Holy Wars 6. Very nice force. Again, I actually like the basing here. You got some good variation across that. There are some places where we could go farther. Things like the Vermin Lord, this dude up here, doesn't quite have enough stuff going on, but cool display board for this being your first army. I think this is an absolute triumph. Like, this is wonderful. You went and did freehand on the banners and stuff like that. Like, you didn't hold back. Look at the book over here, right, that has freehand on it. This is a great first army. You really came out swinging in a big way. And I want to personally say I am so proud of you, amazed by the quality of this. Obviously, this is a long journey to go on. Skaven is a rough first army. To get to this point takes a great amount of concerted effort and work, and I am thrilled and amazed at not only the quality of the paint, but also of the display board and everything else. So well done, Josh. Okay, Lewis with some disciples of Tzeentch. So again, here we see some Tzeentch demons. Nice stuff. Again, I can't see too much. I can zoom in a little so we can see better. The biggest thing that jumps out to me, Lewis, is some things I've mentioned already a few times, which is 1, basing is kind of boring, and 2, more visual interest, especially across the demons, having more variation in the pinkies and in the blue boys, with things like the screamers. They've got all these wonderful texture and dots and stuff. Use that. Paint those different colors. Have those be varied in some way, right? Like, they're crazy chaos demons, and Tzeentch is like the excuse to just go nuts with color. Just have an absolute party. Just go nuts, right? And so this is the chance. So that's what I would say to you. Okay. Our final army we're going to look at here is from Gabriel Winter, who was in a Youngblood. So this is from the he was participating in the kids in the Youngbloods tournament, but he sent in his army. I don't know how old Gabriel is, but I know he had to be under a certain age, so I think it's less than 13 or younger, I think, or is what it was for Youngbloods. So if young Gabriel can get his army painted, however old he is, then there's no excuse for you sitting at home right now to not have your army painted. So well done, Gabriel. I think it's great that you got all your stuff painted and that you worked through it. I also like the box of holding there at the side. That's very cool. So well done, man. Something to be very proud of. I'm sorry that you couldn't go to Adepticon and actually show everyone your army and get a game in. But hopefully in the future you will be able to. And I can't wait to see, Gabriel, what you paint next. So all the love in the world for the young bloods, for our young next generation of painters out there working, building up their skills. Keep it up. So good stuff. Okay, so that brings us to basically the end of all the reviews. But guess what? There's actually prizes for this. That's real. We're actually going to have prizes. So how about that, right? The what we're gonna have here is we're gonna have 3 prizes. These are all from Dark Fantastic Mills. I think that's right. That should be right. I always get their name wrong. I think that's right. And yes, Dark Fantastic Mills. Thank you. I always just say DFM. But obviously they have some rewards that they're offering for folks. And so they were nice enough to contribute for this, which is great. Thank you to Dark Fantastic Mills. Please do look them up. I will link them down below. They are amazing and make truly, truly, truly wonderful, wonderful, wonderful scenery and 3D printed stuff and so on and so forth for your tables and everything. So please do check them out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a first place, a runner-up, and a coolest army, just something that I thought was really cool, the Vince's Choice Award, right? All 3 of them are going to get the same amount, so everybody gets the same prize, and Coach will facilitate that going out, because ultimately this is more about fun. And so, yeah, so there you go. I think most of these, Dave asked, would these have been entries? And yes, I believe most of these people I know were going to be at Adepticon. I don't know if everybody was, so. But in the future, when we do this kind of thing, we're just going to have it be, hey, you finished an army? I can't promise, by the way, actual prizes for that. This was a nice thing that Dark Fantastic Mills was nice enough to donate. So please do patronize them there down below. But I can't promise when I do this in the future I'll have cool prizes, though I can do awards or something that you can just have cool points for. Where you can... I'll send you an email that says "way to go." I guess that can be something. So let's do it like this. Our runner-up for this overall in armies was Jordan Duncan with the Idneth Deepkin. I thought he presented a nice army overall. The paint was really clean. It was well executed. The board looks nice. Color-wise, variance, cleanliness. There's opportunity here to go farther, but I think this was really good, really creative. The integration of everything here comes together really sharply. The cleanliness of the painting, he has lots of good highlights on stuff. It just didn't have that extra nudge, but there were things that I didn't mention before that really did catch my attention. Like you see how he's got the striping on the eels. He integrated things like natural patterning and the patterning in the marble, little touches like the broken edge here, stuff like that. Jordan absolutely was the runner-up in my book, so this is our second place because I thought this was such a great army. So Jordan, I hope you take the advice I had given you. That's how you go from really good to great. Back with that. Our first place winner, that has to go to Oscar and the Nurgle army. Hands down, this is one of the best armies I've ever seen painted in my life, and I've seen a lot of armies. This is truly a unique and amazing, truly, truly fantastic creation, something that you should be proud of for years and years to come. So, just everything about this is horrific on a deep soul crushing level, and that's exactly why you've got first place there. Next up, the coolest. And the coolest award was a little tough because there were multiple armies here that were really cool. But ultimately, I had to pick one that I thought was the absolute coolest. And cool is just however I evaluate it. This is my version of fan favorite with a voting of 1. And that has to go to David Griffin. Wonderful conversions. The halflings, joining up with the Shadow Warriors. All the different, the Pistoliers riding Griffins or Griffhounds, sorry. The Dracoth pulling the converted Huracanum. So much of this, I think, is just a really, really great concept. And I hope to see so much more. I hope David just keeps adding to this army forever and just makes it a thing where there's truly a massive halfling force. So congratulations to David, to Oscar, and to Jordan. I don't know how we'll get in touch with you, but I'm sure since you send it in to Coach, I'll tell Coach what that these were, and I'm sure that somehow we'll figure out how to get those little gifts from Dark Fantastic Mills out to you. There are some definite and thank you to everybody else. What I want to say here is all of these people did amazing. Everybody who submitted here, submitted your army to be reviewed online at a big show, like as part of a show that a lot of people are going to watch. It's not a big show, whatever. It's not what I mean. But that a lot of people are going to watch takes a lot of guts. And I want to say thank you to everyone who did. There were so many armies here that were really, really beautiful and I thought really amazing. I do want to give shout outs to everybody who submitted. All of you should feel really proud. The work you did was wonderful. Finishing an army is something to be proud of. Submitting it here, getting it ready to go, taking these pictures of it, it's just absolutely glorious. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, really I mean this, for letting me look at all of these, to take part, to enjoy these armies. I'm honored to be able to judge them, to look at them, to evaluate them, and I'm deeply, deeply honored to be able to share them with all of you. So thank you so much to everybody who's watching. Hit like down there if you haven't already. I hope this was valuable to the folks both who submitted armies, but maybe if you're thinking of finishing an army or submitting it for an event, hopefully this will help guide you in your own creation. Hitting like helps other people find this. If we are going to make this a thing, I want to make sure we've got lots of armies submitted for me to take a look at, now that I know kind of how long this is going to take to do a show like this. So thank you very much. I hope you all got inspiration for your own forces, for your own painting. I love the silver lining that we're going to do this again. Watch my Twitter. Watch, obviously, our weekly show. And I'll announce when. I have no idea when it'll be. Probably maybe once or twice a year is when we'll do it. I think that sounds like the right answer because armies obviously take a long time to finish. And so thank you very much, everybody. Do remember tomorrow morning, right after the GW reveal show, Tom and I will be doing our review reaction show. So I think that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern because I think the GW reveal show goes from 9:45 to 11. It'll probably be like an hour or something like that. Whenever that show ends is when ours will begin, like a few minutes later. So check that out. But as always, thank you so much for watching this, everybody. Thank you doubly so to everybody who submitted. Can't wait to do this again. But as always, I hope everybody is staying safe. I hope everybody is having fun and getting lots of models painted and staying positive. We have so much to celebrate every day in this community. Let's keep doing that. Let's keep being happy. Let's keep celebrating each other's hobby. So thank you all very much. And I'll see you tomorrow.